You're listening to the Vibrant Vision Podcast, a podcast designed to help you get clarity, increase your confidence, and cultivate the most important connections so you can have the impact you were created to make. I'm your host, Amanda Kerrigan. Now let's get to making that vibrant vision a reality. Hi there, and welcome to episode 23 of the Vibrant Vision Podcast. Today we're talking about something that's really closely related to procrastination that we wrapped up last week. We wrapped up our series on procrastination last week, and one thing that I heard a lot from people was, well, I don't know what to do, so I haven't taken action. I don't have any clarity. And that's one reason we might find ourselves procrastinating. Again, procrastination is an emotional management issue. And because it's an emotional management issue, one of the emotions that we might be avoiding is this thing of uncertainty, a lack of clarity. And I've experienced this quite a bit in my life. And when we're uncertain, it can lead to a lot of different behaviors. And the first one is stagnation. Have you ever felt like life is just passing you by? Like you're not going anywhere, like you're standing in the middle of a river and everything else is moving by you, and yet you're just kind of stuck. Maybe it's like the eddies. A kid, we used to go on rafting trips, and sometimes we would have to row out of these eddies, which would just swirl us around this pool. And if you don't know how to get out of it, you just end up circling and circling and circling. And maybe that's what you feel like. I remember when I was in my 20s, I had majored in healthcare administration, and I wasn't really certain after I started working in the field, and I'd been working in the field for a couple of years. I was just not certain that that's the way that I wanted my career to go, but I didn't know what I wanted. And so I just felt like I was circling the eddy. I was still in the water. I was still rowing, but I didn't really have that forward direction, that forward momentum. And so I kind of just stagnated. And I didn't know where to go and what to do. And I was looking into different career options. I was looking into graduate school, and I didn't know what to do. And so I just did nothing. So that's one thing that clarity can do, is just let us stagnate. It also gives us a lack of focus. So if we're not clear, if we don't have a direction to go in, we will have a lack of focus, and so we'll just do all the things. And I see this a lot with my female entrepreneurs, and the reason I see it with entrepreneurs especially is because we get so many things thrown at us as entrepreneurs. You know, there are ads every time I log on to Facebook or Instagram. There are just ads targeting, you should do this, you should do that, you should do workshops, you should do challenges, you should do summits, you should, and it's like, how do you do it all? And I did this when I was first starting out as a coach. After I'd finally, chosen a career, I did this because I was not certain what I was supposed to do. So I thought I was supposed to do it all, just do it all. And so I frantically overworked just to try and figure it out. And it literally took me years to be confident enough to say, you know what, that's not the direction I want to go. That is not the way I want to do my business. And it also makes us anxious and self-doubting and indecisive and really unfocused, because sometimes we just don't have clarity, and so we don't do anything. We don't work on what we're supposed to work on. We just cannot make that decision. Because both of these situations resulted in indecision for me. The first one, I was really just circling the drain. I didn't know what to do, and so I was researching, but I couldn't make a decision. And the second one, I was just manic. I just frantically overworking and trying to do it all so that I could have the business I wanted. And as a result, I was extremely anxious in both situations. I was very anxious. I didn't believe I could figure it out. I had a lot of self-doubt, which is the exact opposite of confidence. And as you know, if you've been hanging out with me on my podcast for a while, confidence is a huge thing for me. And the reason that I'm so passionate about confidence is because if we're confident, then we can get clarity. And a lot of times people think, well, clarity is going to give me confidence. It's the exact opposite. If we're confident, then we can figure out this clarity piece. And I also had a hard time focusing on other tasks because this whole thing consumed me. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm going to do with my career. I don't know how I'm going to build my business. And so it kind of overshadowed every other aspect of my life. And my relationship suffered, my social life suffered, and it's just not a very good balance. And so that's why I'm so passionate that our vibrant visions have to include our family, our friends, our finances, our faith. It has to include all of that because that is a well-balanced life. It can't just be our career. And so when we are so focused on our lack of clarity, our lack of knowledge, our lack of direction, our lack of certainty, think about all those lacks. We don't have the life we want. We lack in other areas as well. And so what do we do when we find ourselves here? It's May right now. New Year's seems so far behind us. Do you remember the resolutions you set in January? I do, because I read my goals every day. But also, our fresh start seems so far away. Next January seems so far away. And sometimes people will do a fresh start in July, but I'm telling you, you can do a fresh start today. And that's what we're going to talk about, is how do we get out or make it through what Michael Hyatt calls the messy middle, that middle piece where you're so far in that you don't want to stop, but you don't know if you have what it takes to make it through. And part of that is a lack of clarity. You just hit a wall and you're not sure if you can continue on. Maybe you're like me and you've set some goals, and believe it or not, the best coaches have coaches. And the reason for that is we do this too. We set goals and then it's like, holy cow, it's May and I haven't made any progress on this goal. I haven't done anything to make it through. Or maybe you're killing it like I am on one or two goals, and then the rest of them, you're like, what am I going to do with this? Like, there's just no way I'm going to be able to achieve it. And this can be horrifying if you're looking at your goal list and you're like, I haven't checked the box. Especially if you're a recovering overachiever like I am, it can be just so devastating. And the reason, for me at least, is that I didn't have a clear action plan beyond the first couple of steps. So I wrote down the first couple of steps, I knocked those out, and then I kept looking at it and I'm like, oh, I don't know what to do next, but I don't have time to figure it out. And so it just kind of was subject to the tyranny of the urgent, if you will, the tyranny, this is more urgent than what really matters. And so I just kept putting it off. Not intentionally. It wasn't intentional. It was just kind of passive procrastination, because I told myself I just don't have time to focus on that right now. But because I'm a coach, I know that there are a few steps that I can take and that I can take my clients through and my podcast listeners. So here's a little coaching for you today to get us back on track. And this doesn't have to be a goal. It could be a project, a decision, whatever it is that you're like, I just need clarity. This will work. And whatever it is, there are a few action steps that we can take. So let's jump right into those. Step one is to celebrate your success, because a lot of times we think that because there's still a gap, we can't celebrate. There's still a gap between where we are and where we want to be. We can't celebrate the gain. The gain doesn't really matter. And I'm here to tell you that the gain is actually what is going to push your success. It's going to fuel your success. And you need to celebrate how far you've come. Last year, I set a goal of purchasing my first home, which was, in hindsight, probably not the best time to purchase a home. But I really felt this urgency, this push, this spiritual check, if you will, that now was the time to purchase a home. And in my city, I live in Grand Junction, Colorado. It is booming right now. Everybody wants to move to Grand Junction because it's cool. Everybody's moving out of California. And there are a lot of investors who came in and they were putting cash offers on these starter homes because they make awesome rentals. And I literally put in over 10 offers, and every single one of them, I was outbid by a cash buyer. And in the real estate market, cash is king. And I was really intentional. I didn't realize this, but I was really intentional of celebrating with my realtor. We're really like close. This wasn't the right one, but the next one might be. And so I would just celebrate. I went and looked at this house today. I made a decision. This is not the right house for me. I did all of this unintentionally, but I was really celebrating every single step forward, even though I didn't know when or if it would lead to a home. Now, this story has a happy ending because in August, I put an offer in and I was outbid again by $5,000 cash buyer. And the people who were selling my home that I'm in right now said, we don't feel good about this. We really need to take her offer. And so that's just confirmation for me that I'm in the right home. But I wouldn't have been able to keep going. And I did question if I hadn't celebrated all those rejected offers. It's not the right house. And just having that belief. So what have you done that's worth celebrating so far? Maybe you haven't lost all the weight you wanted to right now, or you're kind of stuck. Maybe you're a little bit stagnant, but maybe you've lost 10 pounds. Celebrate those 10 pounds. Maybe you haven't paid off all the debt you wanted to at this point, but you've paid off some debt. You've knocked at least one debt out. Celebrate that. Maybe you don't have all the clients you wanted in your business, but you got one or two. Celebrate. Thank those clients. Send them a gift. Or maybe you haven't gotten all the followers you wanted on Instagram, but you've gotten a few. Celebrate those few. Thank those few for following you. Step 2 is assess whether this goal or project or decision, whatever it is, just assess whether it's still relevant. When my grandparents moved in with my parents in January, my parents had to put their goals on hold temporarily because their goals were not as relevant in that season because they were taking care of my grandparents, because their family took priority. And just a friendly reminder, intentional delay is not procrastination, it is proactive. Okay? So is it relevant? Is it really something that you need to be pursuing in this season? Is this the right time? Or maybe you've had a change and it's no longer relevant. So step 2 is pretty short and sweet. It's a yes or no question. Is it relevant? Step 3, make a decision. So maybe you need to replace this goal with something that's relevant in this season. Giving you my example, last year I wanted to go to graduate school. And I really wanted to learn more about how to be an excellent coach through the study of psychology. But I also had just moved, ended a long-term relationship that was really unhealthy, and again, purchased a house, and I was in a new career. It was not the right time. So I needed to replace this goal with something that was more relevant for me in this season and to my coaching business and to serving my clients. Maybe you need to just remove it. It's just not relevant right now. Put a slash through it. When I ended this relationship, building an awesome relationship with this person, boom, I just removed that goal because it's not relevant anymore. Do you need to reprioritize? Do you need to intentionally delay? Again, being proactive, not procrastinating. Do you need to intentionally delay this goal and reprioritize and set some higher priorities and then pick this goal up later? Do you need to recommit to this goal? Maybe this is a goal that you're really committed to, and yet it's fallen by the wayside. Maybe you just need to recommit and say, yes, this is really a priority. This is something that I really, really want to achieve. So decide what you need to do with this, because that clarity will get you moving forward. Even just making that decision to replace or remove or reprioritize or recommit to that goal is going to give you that clarity. And so it's time to make a decision. Step 4 is set your next actions weekly. This is where I got tripped up. If you'll remember, I had a couple of goals that I didn't make progress on. And the reason was I set my next action steps after I set my goals. I always do this. And yet I didn't come back to them and keep setting those next action steps. Okay, Amanda, what's next? What's next? What's next? And those continuous action steps are what's going to get you moving forward. It's like if I decided that I wanted to take a trip to see my friend in Colorado Springs. It's about a 5-hour drive from where I'm at, but then I stop at my friend's house in Clifton, which is about 10 minutes away from my house, and we just sit there and chat. And I just kind of hang out with that friend instead of going to my original goal, which was to see my friend Debbie in Colorado Springs. Setting one action step is great, but like me, if you make a stop, part of achieving your goal is this, then you've got to get back in the car and start drive. You've got to start pushing on that gas again, because that's what's going to get you to your goal. So it's continuous action. If I knew I needed to drive a certain number of miles heading east, then I would know to keep going. And that's what you need to do. Sometimes you've just got to keep setting those action steps. I have a friend who's an engineer, because sometimes we don't know what action steps to take. And so my friend who's an engineer, when he's designing something, if he doesn't know what to do with it, he just puts a black box around it. He's like, okay, that's a question mark. That's an unknown in this process. And so sometimes we just have to black box our action steps. Like, I'm not sure what that's going to look like, but it shouldn't trip us up. We don't have to see the whole picture. We just have to see 1 or 2 steps ahead of ourselves. And that's why we keep setting those action steps, because we'll set, step 1, we'll take that step, and then suddenly step 2 will become clear. And if you don't have all the answers, do what my friend does. Black box it. It's an unknown. We'll figure it out when we get there. The trick to clarity is to start moving. That's really what's going to get you clarity, is to make a decision and then move in that direction. You can turn around, but you won't know to turn around unless you start driving. As one of my coaching instructors and mentors, Chris McCloskey, says, you can't steer a parked car. So start driving the car. So if you feel stuck, like you just need clarity, first of all, celebrate. Celebrate how far you've come. Even if it's just step 1, like I took. Step 1, celebrate it. Then reassess whether this project or goal or decision, is it still relevant? Do you still need to even make this decision in this season? If it's a yes, then move forward. If it's a no, again, move forward in a different direction. Make a decision. Are you going to replace this goal or project? Are you going to remove it? Just, that's no longer necessary. I need to take that off my plate. Are you going to reprioritize and intentionally delay? Or are you going to recommit? Say yes to this project and just say, I'm really committed. And then finally, keep setting those action steps, because once you start setting action steps and you start moving in a direction, then you're going to really make a lot of progress. So that's all for today. If you've enjoyed this episode, would you do me a favor? Would you just share it with one other person who needs to hear this episode? And if you really want to help me out, if you could go on Apple Podcasts or Google Play and just leave me a review wherever you get your podcasts, it would help me so much. I will be back with another episode next week. Until then, keep living your vibrant vision.